Well, good evening. Here we are again with our friend and our guide, Mr. Boaz Shalgi. Boaz, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, my friend. How about you?
Doing really good. We've
Good.
we've had a great study here at Pleasant View so far. We started out and had a good overview of Mount Carmel and studied that, and then we have just last week completed our study of Caesareas, both of them on the sea, and then Caesarea Philippi.
Very good.
Yeah, and so here we are today up on the brow of the hill, Mount Precipice, overlooking Nazareth. And we will start by taking a look at some of the interesting sights here as we see the place around me, and we'll study Nazareth a little bit, and then we will later in our study move over to Capernaum. So, Boaz, here we are on top of Mount Precipice, and I'm going to share the screen so that you see what we're looking at. Uh, Help us understand this geography. Where are we? What do we see as we look over Mount Precipice?
All right. Thanks, Alan. First, I want to say that, and I may have mentioned that earlier, the biblical geography is so important because it is what the text describes, the Hebrew Bible, the New Testament. And if you're not aware of the geography, I will not exaggerate if I say that you're missing out 50% of the event. Okay? So when you read something about an event that took place in the Bible and it says that they walked from here to there, but you have no idea what the distance is, you have no idea what the terrain is, you have no idea what the temperatures are, you cannot relate to the story. And I'll give you one very small example. This is Mount Precipice. You're right, the brow of the hill. We're looking into Samaria. Okay, first we see the Jezreel Valley, and then in the very distance, Samaria. And when I say Samaria, we always think of the meeting between Jesus and the Samaritan woman. And something that may seem like a small detail, that they met during the midst of the day, in the middle of the day. You know, you will not really pay much attention to that, but if you are from here, or if you have been to Israel in the summertime, when at noon it's about 110 degrees, then you understand that something doesn't make sense. Why would you go to draw water when it's 110 degrees out there, and not like everyone else, early morning or late afternoon? And of course, the reason is that she was very embarrassed with her deeds, so she wanted to make sure that when she goes there, there's no one there, so she will not be embarrassed by people. See how something that seems to be very small is actually very big. So it is always good when we talk about the Bible to see the land in front of us and the relevant one to our story. So here on Mount Precipice, what we see is the Jezreel Valley, which folks, what you know as the Valley of Armageddon, the place of the judgment, the final battle. And, you know, you've been, I'm sure, studying, you know, the book of Revelation, which big chunks of it have to do with the Jezreel Valley. Off to the left of the Jezreel, there's like one solitary mountain over there. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Yes. Can you point out? Yeah, very good. That is Mount Tabor, with the correct Hebrew pronunciation, Mount Tabor. And Mount Tabor is known for a few, again, biblical stories. For instance, Deborah and Barak fought against the armies of Sisera over there. Later on, it became one of the candidates for the transfiguration of Jesus, but this is more of the Catholic tradition. The Protestant tradition locates that on Mount Hermon, which is further north. Magnificent view from up there. If we go with our arrow a bit more to the right, if you would, yes, right there, right there. This is actually the country of Jordan. These are the mountains of Gilead. And to remind you folks, Gilead is where Jephthah, the judge, came from. But also this is where Elijah, the prophet, came from. Elijah the prophet, Elijah the Tishbite, Elijah of Gilead. And to understand that, we need to go even further back into history to the conquest of the land, when the 12 tribes stormed into the land of Israel, conquered the land, and then 2.5 tribes returned back to the east side of the Jordan River, Gad, Reuben, and the half tribe of Manasseh. So you're seeing here the tribe of Reuben, that is the area of Gilead. Let's continue with our arrow. Yes, right there. This is the area of Endor, and this is where King Saul went to see the witch the night before the battle with the Philistines, a big battle where eventually he lost his life, his sons were killed, Israel was defeated. And let's continue behind this range of hills, exactly there. That is Gilboa. This is the mountain range of Gilboa, and somewhere over there is the place of the actual battle between Saul and the Philistines, where eventually Saul got killed, and the Bible tells us that the Philistines hung his body on the walls of Beit Shean. And Brother Allen, you know very well that Beit Shean is always a must stop on our tours, because A, it's so impressive with all its ruins, but also the biblical story of Saul, Israel, and the Philistines. And I always like to tie all of this together, the biblical stories with the actual locations. Now, continue please with the arrow. A little bit more. Okay, so that is the beginning of the desert of Samaria. So up until where the arrow is, that is the Jezreel Valley that we just mentioned. And from here and on, this is Samaria. Samaria was the kingdom of Israel. You all remember that Israel was divided, Israel in the north and Judah in the south. So the area of the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom, that would have been Samaria. This is the capital of King Omri, who later on, after his death, was replaced by Ahab, that we all know from the famous story with Elijah the prophet. But we also know other things. We know that the Jews and the Samaritans were not good friends, okay? And we know that Jesus, when he instructed his disciples to go to Jerusalem for pilgrimage mainly, to avoid the land of the Samaritans. So instead of walking straight from Galilee to Jerusalem via Samaria, which would have been a lot easier, he said to them, no, you have to bypass it. So they did what we did with the arrow a few minutes ago, going to Tabor and then down to the Jordan Valley, through Jericho, and then up to Jerusalem, avoiding the land of the Samaritans. And that is also what Jesus did himself when he came to Jerusalem through Jericho. And that is when Zacchaeus, the tax collector, climbed the sycamore tree because he was a short guy, like myself, in order to be able to see Jesus coming to town. So again, you know, this is a location, Brother Allen, where you can sit all day and talk Bible. Because what we do not see here is that if the arrow would continue going, you know, to the right or to the west, try to do that, more way in the distance. Yeah, exactly there. We can see a little part of Mount Carmel. And behind that is the Mediterranean Sea. So guys, let's go over everything again. We're standing on Mount Precipice, and soon we'll talk about what happened there. Then clockwise, we saw Mount Tabor. We saw the mountains of Gilead, which is modern day Jordan. We saw Endor, the place where Saul went to meet with the witch. Then exactly there, Gilboa, where he lost his life the next day. And then in the very distance, the hills of Samaria. And to the right, Mount Carmel, Elijah the prophet, his famous battle with Asherah and Baal prophets. As for the brow of the hill, Mount Precipice itself, the significance of the place is that from here, we assume somewhere around here, is where the people of Nazareth wanted to push Jesus off the cliff and kill him. And the reason was that he came to the synagogue. By the way, the synagogue still exists. It's called the Synagogue Church in one of the little streets of the old city of Nazareth. And over there on the Sabbath, he preached and read from the book of Isaiah. And they, of course, got mad and they figured, well, he's talking about himself as the king and Messiah, and we're not happy with that. So they brought him to the brow of the hill. They wanted to push him off. They did not succeed. The Bible does not specify what exactly happened, but it says that he disappeared from amongst them. And then the next thing we know about Jesus is that he is now starting his ministry in Capernaum.
Yeah, thank you so much, Boaz. That's excellent. Anytime we go up to Mount Precipice, I just want to stay there longer. You know, I want to stay for hours. And of course, when we tour, we have to keep the group moving because we want to get in as much as we can in the limited time that we can. But yeah, when you stand up on Mount Precipice, as you say, you just see so much of the geography of the scriptures that's really coming together. But let's go back and talk just a little bit more about Nazareth as a place, as a village, as a town. You know, in John's Gospel, chapter 1, when Philip tried to introduce Nathanael to this Jesus he had met, you know, he called him Jesus from Nazareth and was talking about how wonderful he was and how he thought he was the Messiah. And one of the things that most American Christians know about John 1, after the introductory things, is that Nathanael, almost in a humorous way, says to Philip, what good can come from Nazareth? Can anything good come from Nazareth? Tell us more about that. What kind of place was Nazareth that Nathanael would have said that to Philip?
I'm so glad, Alan, that you asked me this question. I am so glad you did, because I want people to understand a few very important things about Nazareth. First of all, you're absolutely right. I mean, Nathanael was like, are you kidding me? And why is that? It's because Nazareth was not known to people, not even to locals who lived in Judea, because it was so tiny that almost nobody, unless you had family or friends over there, you wouldn't even know about the existence of Nazareth. And the question, the theological question is, how is it that the Messiah, the Son of God, coming to earth will demonstrate his appearance not from Jerusalem, not from Bethlehem, not from Hebron, but from a tiny little place? And so much so that even the Gospels had, a challenge how to present that to the audience. How can we say that he came from Nazareth when Nazareth was really not known to anyone? And I said that I really appreciated you asking me this, because I want people to know in the Hebrew Bible, what some call, mistakenly I say, the Old Testament, there's two words that you'll find in the New Testament that you will not find in the Hebrew Bible. And the two words are Nazareth and the cross. Yeah. These two words you don't find in the Hebrew Bible. And that's, again, not a coincidence. I don't think there's any coincidence when it comes to the Bible. Nazareth is the beginning of the ministry of Jesus. And that is almost like prior to the Bible. And that's why it's not there. And the cross is the end of both Bibles. And again, it's not even the end, because it's a beginning of something new. So it's so beautiful to see how the New Testament wraps the Hebrew Bible with the two missing edges, okay? And when people ask me, how do we know, or how can we be sure that Jesus actually came from Nazareth? My answer is plain and simple. Nazareth is not a place that people were proud of.
Mm.
So if I say that I'm coming from Nazareth, I'm probably from Nazareth, because if I was going to lie, I would say I'm from Jerusalem. Why would I lie and say I'm from Nazareth? I don't get any credit for that. So there's no doubt that this is the Nazareth that's also mentioned in the New Testament. Does that
So,
help?
yeah, that helps a lot. Very insignificant place. And, even modern Nazareth is really not outside of Christians and studying scripture. Modern Nazareth is fairly insignificant, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in the Gospels, we study the New Testament and differentiate Matthew, Mark, and Luke from John, because Matthew, Mark, and Luke are what we call the synoptic Gospels, the similar Gospels. And so in each of the synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and then Luke, you get this story of Jesus. He had already moved from Nazareth, and we'll talk about the place to where he moved in a few minutes later in our study. But he comes back to Nazareth as he's going around the area teaching and preaching in the cities and in the synagogues. And this unusual thing happens when he gets back to his original hometown of Nazareth. Scriptures tell us in Matthew chapter 13 and then in Mark chapter 6 that, the people don't hear him. They don't listen to him. They have a disdain for him because they think, well, this is just, as we would say in English, this is just the average Joe that came from down the street. We know his family. He can't be anything really incredible. And then Luke, being a physician, adds a little more detail to the story. And that's where we pick up them not only not listening to Jesus, but bringing him up right here to this location that's behind me, the brow of the hill, where they're going to cast him off. So help us understand that a little more.
It's very similar, Alan, to what is happening in almost every family. Most of us have raised kids, and you know what it's like to raise kids. They always rebel against you. They always reject you until they're really grown up, and then they get to appreciate you. But when they're teens, okay, if you say something to them, they're like, oh, Dad, I don't want to hear it. If I, as a stranger, come to your house and tell your children to do what you told them to do, they'll listen to me a lot more, because they may also be embarrassed, to talk to me the way they talk to you. So prophets, prophecy, wisdom words are oftentimes rejected by the closest people to you because they think they know better. Okay, so even prophets and kings that were wise, oftentimes they were rejected by their own people, but then when someone came from the outside, they would listen to him. And that is why Jesus realized that fairly quickly and said, my own family, my own people will not listen to me. Let me go out. Out people will listen to me, and eventually the word will spread all over and come back also to my people who have rejected me.
It's interesting, Boaz, when we think about how Jesus works for us at the point of our faith. And, the Gospels are clear to point out that it's not that he didn't want to teach in Nazareth. Obviously, he went there and following his pattern, he teaches on the Sabbath in the synagogue.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to note that the Gospels say he could do no miracle in Nazareth because of the lack of the people's faith.
That means that even if he was physically able to do that, they would still reject him and not believe him.
Yeah.
And maybe even hate him more, thinking that he's, a bad magician or someone that can curse them. And so, so it was the right thing for him to do, to leave town and basically say, I will be back one day. And when I'm back, you will accept me.
Right. Okay. Just one little bit of information further. explain to us more about why did they rush him up on this mountain, Mount Precipice, and again using our scale 1 to 10. This is very likely a 10, right?
Yes, yes. This will be a 10. They chose Mount Precipice because this is the closest big hill to where the synagogue was. So they're now like, we're not even wasting time. We're going to take you right away to the place where we can make sure that you're not going to survive. So Mount Precipice did not have any significance before that. It just happened to be a big cliff near the synagogue. And they said, let's take him right there and make sure he's not coming back.
Yeah. And I wish we could just transport the people here and put them right on Mount Precipice, because just behind me in this picture, it's rugged and it's steep, and you could see that, you know, if they had been successful,
you're not likely to survive
Jesus
it
from this. No, not at all. All right. Well, thank you, Boaz, for helping us with Nazareth and understanding Mount Precipice and all this spectacular view behind me, and how so many of the Hebrew Bible stories just come together. And as you helped us understand with Nazareth and the cross and how that connects all the dots. We appreciate it. So we'll stop here and we'll come back together again in just a few moments in a new location.